Let's rewind time. The year is 2008. Call of Duty had just hit new heights of modern warfare and it was now on the map. But now it was Treyarch's turn, and as they say, the sequel was always harder to make than the original. This time it was back to basics, back to the franchise's roots, back to World War II. So grab an MP40 and some popcorn as we look at Call of Duty World at War and how Treyarch made the best World War II game. When you're making a World War II game, or a game about any war for that matter, there is one thing you have to get right: presenting and representing it in the most transparent way possible. And out of every World War II game that I've ever played, there is no game that explores the diverse, multifaceted, gritty and devastating horrors of war quite like World at War. Whether the game is showing you the different tactics and characteristics that made each army unique, the horrors of war that we sometimes shy away from, and things that aren't always in the rulebook, or how it portrays brutality, not just in some of the scenes we see, but in its harsh gameplay. From top to bottom, World at War doesn't take a second to shy away from war, and it's a constant reminder of what millions of people had to fight through almost a century ago. Speaking of portrayal, World at War is a game unlike some of the newer World War II games. They would have you believe that the war was simply USA versus Germany, but this game remembers the involvement of both Russia and Japan. The campaign gets underway in Japan as you play as Private C. Miller, deep in enemy territory, with seemingly no way out. Fortunately, we're rescued by our squadron, but quickly we learn that the Japanese don't have the same tactics as us. It's an iconic yet scary scene as we run up the hill, and all we hear is
Banzai! Hold your ground! Hold your ground!
You freeze all of a sudden, as the Japanese soldiers jump from out of nowhere in a last-ditch attempt to take you out. We eventually make it out of this, but this mission tells us everything about how this game showcases war. It's dark, it's tough, and it isn't as simple as facing the enemy head-on. The story quickly splits into two different perspectives. The one we just saw, with the US Marines pushing into enemy territory of the Imperial Japanese Army, and now, as we wake in the midst of a battlefield, amongst the blood and destruction left behind, and a man lay before us. A man who will do anything for his country. That man is Viktor Reznov. And so begins one of the best Call of Duty missions of all time, Vendetta. The name says it all. The Russians have a vendetta against the Axis. Yes, I will be calling them the Axis, as I don't know what YouTube will think if I say the other word. The game portrays the Russian army as desperate, a country that's been decimated by the Axis, and an army that will try and do anything to get a one-up on them. Reznov epitomises this to a T, and as he takes us on a journey throughout Stalingrad, sneaking through the streets, his determination to win back his land is brought to the forefront. He teaches us lessons in sniping, and it all culminates in taking out a high-ranking Axis general. That's not to say the mission is easy, as it's very oppressive in difficulty, and it's a constant reminder that you as the Russian army are at a disadvantage in this particular battle. As we progress through the story on the Soviet side, we see an increase in brutality and merciless nature from Reznov. He wants to inflict the same pain that he's felt throughout this war, but it completely blurs the lines of what's good and bad, and it brings in the question of morality in this war. On the Marine side of things, we progress through intense missions like Burn 'Em Out as we go through trenches. The close quarters combat puts a magnifying glass over the gameplay and how powerful and realistic the guns feel. For a game that released in 2008, it had genre-defining realism and conveyed the sheer panic that would have been felt in these trenches. As the game approaches its finale, the Marines and Soviets make their final push. The Marines fight their way into Shuri Castle, fighting off the last and most skilled members of the Imperial Army, until finally capturing the last piece of land on Okinawa. The Soviets pushed towards the Reichstag, their army thinning in the most brutal of ways. But with the help of Reznov, Dmitry, who's been badly wounded, makes his way to the top to plant the flag in an act that would symbolise the end of World War II in Europe. On face value it seems heroic. It seems happy. But as the music sets in and as the credits begin to roll, you look back at both what the game has presented and what you already know about World War II, and you realise that the little victory at the end cannot make up for the horrors you've gone through. No matter what side, what allegiance, or what nation you see it from, this war has hurt them all, and the World at War campaign reminds you of that every second it has your attention. It doesn't end with you feeling uplifted and happy, but instead deep in thought, and with a respect for the millions that risk their lives for the future. As you already know by now, and I'll probably say it time and time again throughout this series, Call of Duty 4 changed the game with its multiplayer, so World at War already had a blueprint to go off. And essentially, as we look back at this game retrospectively, this game is basically Call of Duty 4 with a World War II skin over it. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, as these new features still felt fresh, and the World War II weapons, maps and overall vibes certainly made the two games feel different. In terms of the class selection, the same system is in play here, with your very basic 3 perk slot, equipment and weapons. The only differences being, obviously, that these were World War II guns like the M1 Garand, PPSH, etc. The kill streaks also follow the same 3-5-7 format as Modern Warfare, and whilst they were different to the ones in that game, the customization still hadn't been introduced yet. Perhaps the funniest similarity between COD 4 and World at War is that still to this day, both have an incredibly OP weapon present. We talked about the M16 last time out, but World at War has an equally annoying gun. The MP40. This thing is simply ridiculous. An SMG that can two-shot people from across the map. That's the MP40. Pair this thing with stopping power and it will pretty much guarantee you a two-shot. Or use Jug instead and you'll have more health with a gun that can take anyone in a split second. Is it annoying? Well, yes. But is it cool to have a piece of history from 2008 that's still intact to this day? Well, also yes. I said it before and I'll say it again, but when weekly patches and updates weren't a thing, weapons like this would dominate throughout the entire game's existence, and in turn they would end up becoming iconic. But okay, that's enough of the similarities between COD 4 and World at War. It's time we now talk about what makes this game stand out and so memorable despite its lack of innovation. The map design, and once again, the presentation. Playing some of these maps in 2024 takes you back to a different time. A time where the developers weren't as focused on making maps feel small and action-packed, but instead, they set out to make a range of maps that would accommodate every playstyle. Take maps like Silo or Outskirts, huge sprawling maps more akin to something seen in Battlefield. Whilst not perfect, these maps fit the bill for a more methodical playstyle, and where snipers could dominate. The inclusion of tanks also made these maps stand out. I don't think these maps could work in the modern games, but when paired with gamers like War, the larger maps in World at War had the potential to play well. Medium-sized maps like Macon or Hangar I find to be very underrated in both their gameplay and how they present the World War II setting. The best map in presenting the World War II setting though is definitely Airfield. Now this is a very odd map, with a design that's only really seen in this era of Call of Duty, with an extremely open battlefield. A map where I always felt like I was scrambling for cover, and it was able to convey a feeling of being in a war like no other map in this game. And of course, World at War comes with its standouts. The couple of maps that for me could play well in any COD game, and epitomise what good map design is in this franchise. Dome and Castle. Dome was the small map in this game, but it had a design that allowed for more varied gameplay than we saw the year before with Shipment. There was verticality on each side, and lines of sight where rifles and snipers could have more of a chance. But that didn't take away from its fast-paced nature, and it flowed great. Castle for me is one of the best maps in the entire series. It is the shining example of how to use power positions for map flow. This was a medium to large size map in a beautiful Japanese castle. I mean, what a contrast from some of the other gritty maps in the game, instantly making it iconic. The gameplay revolved around the tower that I'm sure everyone has spent time camping in. With a view over two open areas in the map, It was a great place to hunker down, but with everyone fighting for it, the spot just works so well. You could choose to attack it directly with a shotgun or SMG running through the main building, or maybe you would toss a grenade through the window, or maybe you would choose the parallel window across the map, which was my particular choice in Sniper 1v1s. Ah, the good old times. I always say this word and I'm sure it will come up again and again during this series, but variety is what makes a good selection. I don't think that this selection has the best gameplay and the most iconic maps, but it has maps that are gritty, that show different battles from World War II, and that favour different types of gameplay, making it feel constantly fresh. The World at War multiplayer is a slight step back from me from COD 4, but it's still very solid. Looking back, I do wish it took a couple more risks, but I think either way, we're left with a fun experience and certainly the most authentic war multiplayer in the series. I'm excited to finally cover COD Zombies on this channel, and what better way to start than the origins, no not that one, of this iconic mode. After finishing the campaign, the player is suddenly thrown into a mysterious bunker with zombies shambling towards it. Armed with just a pistol, you manage to fight off the first horde. That terrifying sound, signifying a new round is starting, plays for the first time, and you realise that this isn't the end. You grab a rifle from the wall, and you try and hunker down. Soon, you're overrun in the first room, so you open up your first door. But what's this? A box that costs 950 of those points that you've collected? So you decide to give it a spin, and boom! Look what you get eventually, this weird alien gun. I'm sure this will be useful. You get overrun again, and quickly make your way upstairs. An unknown power from the future tells you to not buy this door, but instead the other one, as you might get overrun. You hold down in the corner for as long as you can, but eventually you're overrun with zombies. The game ends, but you just cannot wait to play another match, and get even further and find more secrets. Your friend tells you the next day that he reached around 20, and suddenly, it motivates you to beat their high score. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a simple experience that Nactor and Totem was able to create, and with the most basic mechanics and a small bunker to hold up in, Treyarch was able to craft a mode that was instantly addictive, replayable, and had endless potential for fun. They wouldn't take long to expand on the idea, with a rook soon around the corner. It kept the same creepy atmosphere of the first map, and turned it up by 10. The scariest zombies map ever created was based on the Asylum multiplayer map, and the close quarters combat seemed even more difficult than Noct. But Treyarch knew this, so they decided to throw you a bone in the form of perks. The original 4, Quick Revive, Jug, Speed Cola and Double Tap were all here to give you boosts such as faster fire rate or faster reload, and could help you hold out for just that bit longer. It showed that zombies was here to stay, but Treyarch wasn't done there. Shi no Numa would release in the summer of 2009, and bring zombies to the swamps of Japan. A much more open map that would popularise the idea of training, and that saw random perk locations, keeping each match fresh. The Flogger Trap would become an icon, and players quickly realised that this map was the easiest to reach high rounds on, due to the zombie cap for each round, combined with the power of the trap. As of 2024, the legend cruppz reached round 11,482, which is the highest I could find footage of on YouTube. By the time the release rolled around a few months later, this mode that may have seemed like an afterthought at first had become a phenomenon. But this map was the one to really change the direction of zombies moving forward. It was a slightly larger map that seemed to incorporate aspects of all the other maps. Perks were here, traps were here, and it had both good training spots and legendary camping spots. Everyone has been up here with a PPSH. The biggest innovation though was the introduction of Pack-a-Punch, and perhaps the most forgotten part, the mini quest to do it. By activating 3 teleport links to the mainframe, Pack-a-Punch could be unlocked, and as a result, every single gun could be upgraded. This was mind-blowing at the time, and it opened up so many new possibilities. In the space of a year, zombies had blossomed into an exciting third mode, and players could not wait to see if it would continue, given the little seeds of a story that Treyarch began to plant. This mode almost didn't even make it into the final release, but I'm grateful that it did, because it sparked a brilliant mode and story, which created a community that cherished every piece of Zombies content going forward. I'm sure Zombies will have a big part to play going forward in this series. No matter what mode you play in World at War, it retains the same distinct feel of gritty, horrific war. Its campaign makes you respect war, and gives you important history on how brutal it really was. The multiplayer is methodical. It allows you to take in the different sounds and atmosphere of all the different battlefields, and it proved that the COD 4 blueprint could be used going forward. And finally, we had a new mode in the form of Zombies that was clearly here to stay, and its potential was endless. It's for these reasons why I give Call of Duty World at War a 79 out of 100 score. A horrifically brilliant game that I could not recommend enough for those interested in a game that doesn't shy away from anything. It is by far one of the best portrayals of the time period of the market, and World at War is the game most deserving of a remaster, as it can feel clunky at times and the player base is low. But that doesn't hold it back from being simply the best World War II game ever made.